God, 2024 is finally over. It was a tragic year with a tragic ending, and our prayers go out to the victims of the mass killings in New Orleans on New Year's Eve. But that tragic event was only the last in a long line of tragedies in 2024. In 2024 alone, there were 83 school shootings. Try to wrap our heads around that number. In 2024, there were 83 school shootings. Now add to all those shootings everything else that we had to put up with. Hurricane Helene, the deadliest mainland U.S. hurricane since Katrina, causing more than 191 deaths. While we're dealing with that, we had to endure one of the most contentious elections in U.S. history. Is our world spinning out of control exponentially? Is the world just simply out of control? Is there any hope left for humanity? Or have things just gotten so bad now, we just can't recover from it? Some of you may remember that I asked these same questions towards the end of 2023. At the end of that year, we listed all the horrible things that happened in 2023, and we were hoping for a good 2024. We wondered back then, were things too far out of control? And it hasn't just been last year and this year. Think of the past 5 years. They have been unbelievably out of control. I preached a similar sermon, not just last year, but a few years back at my old church, talking about things like the Boulder shooting that left 10 dead in 2021. That same year, a winter storm in Texas. I mean, talk about hell freezing over on earth. I mean, when does that happen? Then we had, of course, 2021, the January 6th Capitol insurrection. 2020, we have the COVID-19 and the pandemic, George Floyd protests, California wildfires, the opioid crisis. It sounds like another version of the song, right? 2018, we have the Parkland shootings, 17 dead. The Las Vegas shooting, leaving 58 dead back in 2017. And then we had Hurricane Harvey, and we can name all kinds of other hurricanes here in Florida, right? Doesn't seem like there's been a period of time in history where things have been just this out of control. I want to go back to a more wholesome time when I was a child. I was born in 1969, which means my childhood was in the 70s. I want to go back to that wholesome time when the world seemed right. Or was I too young to realize 58,000 U.S. soldiers dying in Vietnam? Was I too young to be aware of the Watergate scandal, the Kent State shootings, the energy crisis, the Jonestown massacre, the 3 Mile Island, the assassination of Harvey Milk and John Lennon? Have we ever realized that every time we reminisce to that wholesome time, we always reminisce to a time before we watch the news? If we go back another decade from there, we get to the civil rights unrest, the assassination of JFK, Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. I mentioned all these last year in a sermon. We keep going back, though, to the Korean War. We go back from there to the Pearl Harbor, and then, of course, that led to 400,000 Americans who died in World War II. Or we can look to the 620,000 Americans who died in the Civil War. Or we can go back farther to the Trail of Tears. We can go to the Revolutionary War. At this point, we've only covered American history. We haven't even mentioned things like the Great Depression, slavery, systemic racism, and a whole host of other things we can continue rambling on all day about. But when we step back even further from just American history, we get a broader perspective. We look at things like COVID-19, that pandemic that we all had to suffer through. We mainly focus oftentimes on the U.S. We're kind of self-centric like that, aren't we? But the pandemic killed more than 7 million people worldwide. People often talk about the pandemic as evidence of how bad the world has gotten out of control. You might even see some religious folks talk about it. It's a sign of the end times, right? Now, even though 7 million people seems like a huge number, compare that to the Black Death in 1347 to 1351, which killed an estimated 75 to 2 million people. Wiped out nearly 30 to 60% of Europe's population. The Spanish flu back in 1918, 1919 killed an estimated 50 to 100 million people. We can look at the AIDS pandemic, which has now killed more than 36 million people worldwide. I want to go way back. We can go to the plague of Justinian back in 541 and 542. That killed an estimated 50 million people. Now, when we argue with each other about how our COVID-19 pandemic was so mismanaged, and you know how it went. We all lived through it, right? If you leaned Democrat, you blamed the Republicans. If you leaned Republican, you blamed the Democrats for mismanaging this crisis. Realize we live in a time of scientific understanding. And even if efforts were indeed mismanaged by whoever, then that makes it even more remarkable that we kept the deaths down to a fraction of past pandemics. Life is pretty good right now. We can look at other facts, like facts related to social justice issues. I know many people in this church, including myself, are very passionate about social justice issues. But sometimes we become so fixated on the work that still needs to be accomplished, we lose sight of the victories that have already been won. It seems like since the beginning of time, women have been treated as second-class citizens. We men seem to dominate everything in society and have since the caveman. Or have things changed so dramatically, but we just haven't realized? We become so focused on the women's rights still yet to be realized, and there are many rights yet to be realized. We'll hear that. There are still work to be done. But we got so focused on the work that needs to be done, we never noticed that today 60% of our college students are women. Only 40% are men. I'm not done. 60% of master's degrees are given to women. 53% of doctorate degrees are given to women. More than 50% of med students are women. 55% of law students are women. And right now, 42% of businesses in America are owned by women. And with women becoming educated at a far faster rate than men, that statistic will soon be dominated by women as well. Do women still have rights yet to be realized? Yes, of course. But it's also true, life is pretty good. Last year, our church made the official step to, by unanimous vote, by the way, to declare ourselves as an open and affirming congregation, embracing the full rights of the LGBTQ community. And while we have a long way to go in achieving full equality, let's not lose sight of the many victories that have been won. In Delaware, Sarah McBride became the first openly transgender person elected to Congress. Same-sex couples can jointly adopt, with both partners being recognized as the legal parent in most states. Spouses in same-sex marriages have the right to be covered by their partner's health insurance. And of course, we all have the right to marry. In just the past 20 years, it's just been a flood of LGBTQ rights. We've made tremendous strides. Does the LGBTQ community still have rights yet to be realized? Yes, of course. But it's also true, life's pretty good right now. We can look at civil rights. We can look at some of those obvious victories that we always talk about, the Voting Rights Act and the fact that we elected a black president and a black vice president, but the true victories run much deeper than the headlines. Today, there are more than 3 million black-owned businesses in the United States. 59% of those black-owned businesses are owned by women. There are 58 black members of Congress. There are 55 black mayors that lead major cities across the country like Atlanta, New Orleans, Chicago, Los Angeles. Now, do all minorities have rights still yet to be realized? Yes, of course. But it's also true, life's pretty good. In all these areas we just mentioned, women's rights, LGBTQ rights, the racial equality, we do indeed have challenges ahead, so hear that. I mean, we're not glossing over anything. There are rights not yet realized. We also need to make sure we don't regress on rights that have already been won. But when we step back and look at the big picture, put things in historical context, life's pretty good. You know that 50 years from now, 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, we'll still be fighting for rights yet realized because there are rights that we probably never even dreamed that are rights. There's always somewhere to go. But we need to celebrate where we've come from. Celebrate the moment in which we are living right now. Would you rather be a minority in the United States today or 50 years ago or 100 years ago? Life's pretty good. Would you rather be a woman in the United States today or 50 years ago or 100 years ago? Life's good. Would you rather be a member of the LGBTQ community in the United States today or 50 years ago or 100 years ago? Life's good. Would you rather be alive during the COVID-19 pandemic, or would you have rather been alive during the Black Plague? Come on, folks, life is pretty good. Would you rather be diagnosed with cancer today or diagnosed with cancer 50 years ago or 100 years ago? Life's pretty good. How wonderful is it? How wonderful is it to wake up and breathe in the gift of another day? A day that was not promised, yet we are here. Blessed by the grace of God to experience life anew. What a profound blessing it is to simply exist in this moment. To feel the rhythm of our hearts, the warmth of the sun on our faces. Let's not take it for granted. Each and every morning we rise, we're invited into a masterpiece. Have you ever paused to just marvel at the delicate petals of a flower? Its vibrant hues, whisper of a creator who delights in the details. A God who crafts beauty even in the smallest of things. Have you watched the sunset recently? The sky ablaze with colors that no artist could replicate. reminding us of God's artistry is unmatched and unending. Then there's the laughter of a child. That pure, unguarded joy that echoes the sound of heaven. When we hear it, we're reminded of innocence. That unfiltered delight in simply being alive. Let us allow their laughter to awaken the child within us, the part of our soul that sees wonder in the ordinary. Life's beauty is not just in what we see and hear, but also it lives in the love we share. Think about the loving embrace of this church community, the joy of fellowship, the comfort of shared burdens, and the power of collective worship. What a gift it is to belong, to be a part of a community that reflects the hands and feet of Jesus in this world. In every hug, in every kind word spoken, in every prayer that's given on our behalf, we see God's love made tangible. But here's the secret. Here's the secret. Life's beauty is always present, but waiting to be noticed. Too often we rush past the wonders that God has woven into our day. We're caught up in our worries and we're distracted by the what's next. We become blinded by the here and now. Yet today, this very day, is a holy gift. Let us open our eyes, open our ears, open our hearts to fully receive this moment. Let us choose gratitude over grumbling. Let us choose wonder over worry, joy over busyness. For when we do, we live as God intended, with hearts open to the beauty of creation, the love of our neighbors, and the divine presence found in all things. As you leave this sanctuary today, may we walk a little slower, breathe a little deeper, and look a little closer to see the flowers, to watch a sunset, to listen for that laughter, to feel the embrace. And in doing so, may we encounter the goodness of God all around us. Hear this. We are not living in chaotic times. We are not living in tragic and challenging times. Because life has always been chaotic. Life has always been tragic. Life has always been challenging. It's not these times. We're describing life. But life has always been filled with a beautiful gift from God. I guarantee you that the chaotic times in the world right now, when we step back and truly reflect on how far humanity has come to this point, we quickly realize how blessed all of us are to be living in this moment. Don't fret about the past. Don't worry about tomorrow. Embrace today. Embrace God's gift of life. And as we face those challenges in life that do come, in the midst of that challenge, just step back, take a breath, and remember, life is good. Amen. As we celebrate the gift of life, we now celebrate the gift of Jesus during our communion. Again, as we said, everyone is invited to the table. When I do my little blessing over the cup and the bread, I might use the word wine, but we use grape juice in case that's an issue for anyone as well. But feel free to come forward as you are invited. On the night in which Jesus gathered with his disciples,